Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Wellness Talk podcast. I am George Batista, your host and your wellness advocate. Today, we're going to dive into the issue of pesticides. It's a big discussion happening nowadays, right? But specifically, we're going to get into, obviously, Roundup, Glyphosate, Monsanto, and the whole discussion behind that, because there's a lot of stuff happening, especially with the new administration, with RFK coming in. And, we don't know what's going to happen with that. And we're going to see what kind of regulations get passed, if they get passed, or if there's any changes that happens on that end. But the big discussion today is, how do pesticides affect you? How bad is it? And is it worse than we originally thought? We're going to dive into that today with two pieces. First one is from Wellness Resources, and this is how pesticides disrupt gut, brain, heart, and hormones. So pretty much self-explanatory. We're going to dive into how disruptive pesticides and glyphosate, those things, can they be to the human body, what they do, how does your body break them down, how does your body deal with the inflammation, and what can we do on our end to try to put the odds in our favor to detoxify. So that's what we're going to talk about there. Then another article from the Children's Health Defense. This is Roundup weed killers caused multiple cancers in rats. Large international study finds. Brand new study on this. And again, it's pretty much self-explanatory. We're going to get into the study, how these rats were tested, what they found, and what does that mean for you. Here we present the questions, we present the information, so you can take a look at it, you can do the research for yourself, and then you can decide whether this is something you want to take any action on, whether you're using this stuff for yourself or whether you decide not to use it, whatever the case may be. We all know that farmers are still using this. Obviously, it's still being sold out there. A lot of people are using it. Maybe some people don't know about these harms, right? So we want to educate. So again, a lot of great information on that. And then the third piece is going to be a clip. I'm going to play a clip from Cheryl Atkinson. Now, this is back from 2018, but this is relevant to what's going on today because this was a lawsuit that was brought by someone who was harmed by these pesticides. And they actually won this lawsuit. And the bigger picture is, why did they win this lawsuit? What did they find? What was disclosed from Monsanto? And what made it easier for this person to actually win this lawsuit? And then after that, what happened? Tons of lawsuits happening, and they're still happening, right? There's a lot of lobbying going on by these pesticide companies and the Monsantos of the world and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future, but I still want to shine a light on this because, again, at the end of the day, this still affects all of us, right? Because we're still all exposed to these pesticides and herbicides and everything that's being used. And then the final question I'm going to ask is, what can we do? Again, how can we detoxify? Can we detoxify? How can we get this stuff out of our system and, again, put the odds back in our favor to bring down the inflammation that these pesticides cause? So I'm going to go into that, talk about some supplementation, and just talking about just some regular things that you guys can do on your end to try to detoxify yourselves. So that's going to be our discussion today. Of course, go to georgebatista.com. Check out these articles. Make sure you read through these articles. Make sure you share them. Like, share, and subscribe. Get the information out there because we want people to know what's going on. Again, there are some people that don't know anything about this, right? They haven't done any research on this. They don't know that these could possibly be cancer-causing chemicals that they're dealing with. So we want to get the information out there so they can decide for themselves if this is something they want to, again, take action on. So make sure you share this. Make sure you do your own research. I'm presenting the information to you so you can do your own research and be an informed consumer. And of course, if you want to donate, please donate to the show as always. If you want to follow the show, you can actually put georgebatista.com/follow, and all the platforms will come up that we're on, and then you can decide to follow us on your favorite platforms. All right, guys. So before we, of course, move forward, we want to talk about our friends at Wellness Resources. Wellness Resources formulates the most superior quality nutritional supplements that deliver the most absorbable nutrients in optimal amounts to make a true difference in your health. For 40 years, this family-owned and operated supplement company has used only the highest quality nutrients, no chemical additives, the same nutrient forms used in clinical research, and enough of the nutrients to be beneficial. This attention to quality makes a significant difference in the health results you will see and feel. Now, you guys know I am a fanatic about the quality of supplements that I use. And that's why I've been using Wellness Resources supplements now for over 17 years, and I love them. Discover how Wellness Resources supplements can help you feel energized and well. Check them out at myvitaminresource.com. Again, that's myvitaminresource.com. Check out Wellness Resources supplements today. All right, so let's get started into our discussion. And the first one is from Wellness Resources: how pesticides disrupt gut, brain, heart, and hormones. A lot of stuff going on there, so we'll dive right into it. So let's get into the numbers first. As always, we like to present the data just so you guys can have a clear picture of what's going on out there. The data is overall pesticide use in 2022 reached 4.2 million metric tons, which is an 80% increase from 1990. China is the largest user of pesticides. That's interesting, right? Followed by the United States, Brazil, Argentina, Canada, France, Russian Federation, Colombia, Australia, and India. Glyphosate, found in Roundup and other brands, is the most used organophosphate herbicide in the world. It has been registered pesticide in the it has been a registered pesticide in the U.S. since 1974. So what's the big deal on this? Well, the problem is, again, this is a registered pesticide. They've been using this for a long, long time. And we're seeing, as the years have gone by, how much of a problem this has become. Why? Because we're seeing now that the more and more you're using these pesticides, the more and more it's causing health issues, because it is being broken down. It's breaking through the epithelial membranes of your respiratory tract and your gastrointestinal tracts and the skin. And it's starting to penetrate into the deeper tissues of people. Okay, where this is the studies that have been done, and they're seeing this. They're seeing the pesticide residue, that it's actually causing problems and literally lodging itself into tissues, digestive tract, respiratory tract, and stuff like that. So what does this mean? This intrusion means that, number one, it's localized release of numerous alarm signals and inflammatory cytokines to alert your body's defense mechanisms and neutralize the threat. Number two, as the barriers are breached, more inflammatory reactions with immune signals cause increased oxidative stress in the lungs, gastrointestinal tract, and liver. Three, foreign substances trigger gut microbiome changes, leading to dysbiosis. More immune threats and alarm signals occur, causing increased intestinal permeability. And four, toxins and inflammatory compounds enter the circulation, affecting organs and tissues elsewhere. So that's not good, right? It's not good at all. We're seeing it's really causing a cascade in your body, but it gets even worse than that. Okay, so when we take a look at our antioxidant defense systems, right, we have the big major antioxidant defense systems, which are which is glutathione, which is the biggest antioxidant, right? That's the master antioxidant in our body. We have N-acetylcysteine, or NAC. We've heard a lot about that. There's supplements that contain NAC. And we have superoxide dismutase, right? These are the big antioxidant systems in your body that actually help to quench inflammation in your body on a normal basis, right? All the inflammation that we're dealing with on a regular basis, those systems interact with them and actually start to bring down the inflammation. However, when you are dealing with these pesticides, when you are dealing with the toxic burden that these pesticides bring, what they're finding is that it's down-regulating these antioxidant systems, and it's up-regulating the inflammatory systems. And those inflammatory systems are the tumor necrosis factor alpha system, interleukin 6, and the COX-2 and other compounds. They're literally being upregulated in the digestive tract and everywhere else in your body. Again, this is a big problem because we all know that glutathione, if you have low glutathione in your body, which is the master antioxidant, it's a big chance that you have a higher inflammation burden. And glutathione, by the way, right, it's one of the things that works because of N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine works together to make sure that glutathione is working properly in your body. So literally, you're seeing a downregulation of these antioxidant systems. Also, these toxic burdens, again, accumulate in the gut, in the lungs, in the heart, in the kidneys, in the nervous system, reproductive organs, and other parts of your body. So they're finding these inflammatory compounds in all these systems of your body. Again, this is what the studies are showing in the past few years. Now, how does this interact with your nervous system? Well, this is a big problem for your nervous system, obviously, because the pesticide exposures also lead to increased release of glutamate. What is glutamate? Glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. I've talked about glutamate many times on this show, but it's the excitatory neurotransmitter in your brain. It actually causes kind of almost like anxiety, right? It's used for alertness. It's used for wakefulness, right? For focus, for your alert systems, right? However, if you have an overproduction of this excitatory neurotransmitter, this can cause problems. This can cause signaling problems. This can cause an overexpression of anxiety. This can cause all different types of issues. So we're seeing an overexpression of glutamate in your body, and this stresses the brain, right? This stresses the glial cells, which are the repair mechanisms, the repair cells of your brain, right? This stresses GABA, which is the signal in your brain that actually calms things down. And this, at the end of the day, this contributes to neurological wear and tear, which could eventually lead to cognitive decline, right? And all forms of dementia, Alzheimer's. I mean, it can literally lead to a cascade of things. So they're seeing this now as part of the nervous system and the brain. Also, this causes subtle effects, neurotoxic effects. Again, it depletes glutathione and other antioxidants in the brain as well. Now, how does it affect you? Because remember that when you start depleting these things and you get a more excitatory response in the brain, it's going to change sleep-wake cycles. It's going to change melatonin production in the brain, right? Because you're not going to get as much of a melatonin production in response to darkness in the evening. It's going to keep you awake. It's going to start to, again, which in turn is going to start to lead to less detoxification of the brain, of the lymphatic system, and so on and so forth. So you're going to get less overall detoxification, which again leads to neurological decline and so on and so forth. So you see how it's a domino effect, right? One thing leads to the other, leads to the other, leads to the other. This is what they're seeing. Also, how does this affect your heart? Well, again, this gets into the tissues, lungs, gut, and liver, but also the free radicals start to make their way into the circulatory system. They start to bump up against the endothelial lining in the blood vessels and travel to the heart, right? We all know the endothelial lining in the blood vessels, right? A lot of inflammation happens there if you don't have the antioxidants, if you don't have the systems that's able to stop that, right? So, and when you start to see inflammation in those vessels, this is a problem because this can lead to things like coronary problems, coronary heart disease, atherosclerosis, things like that, right? You start to get foam cells. You start to get all these things to try to stop that situation, but it may not stop. This can also lead to atrial fibrillation, all types of arrhythmias. So again, this is stuff that they're seeing throughout all these studies. And again, everything that I'm saying here is stuff that they've already found. This is because of the use of these types of pesticides. Now, there was a 2024 study that showed that glyphosate inhibits testosterone production. So now we're getting into fertility. And also increases lipid peroxidation in men, as well as depleting, again, glutathione as part of the fertility system. So now Lipid peroxidation, we know that's basically damaging of fat cells. And we're seeing now also depleting of glutathione in the first fertility department. So this actually correlates very well with what I've talked about before, where we're seeing a lot of problems in terms of sperm motility, in terms of testosterone in men, especially in the recent years, right? A lot of fertility problems having. I did a whole program on that. If you guys want to go to the website and just do a search on that. I talked about low T in men and fertility issues that are going on. I'm sure a lot of this has to do with that as well. So that's part of the problem that we're seeing here in terms of just people in general, people having issues and what they're seeing in the studies for people. Now let's move on to the big study. And this is from Children's Health Defense. And this is Roundup weed killers caused multiple cancers in rats, large international study finds. This is a brand new study on this. And this study was conducted by the Ramazzini Institute in Italy and Boston College. So let's get into the study and what they found here. So they examined the impact of glyphosate in two common glyphosate-based weed killer formulations. It was Roundup BioFlow, which is used in Europe, and Ranger Pro, a generic version of Roundup used in the United States. So let's see what they found. Researchers gave the weed killers to groups of rats over 2 years and compared the results to unexposed group of rats. And the quote here is, our study showed carcinogenic effects in rats at dosages that are currently considered safe. That's the scary part. That's the scary part because these dosages are considered safe. And remember, I've talked about in the past on this program how certain products are generally recognized as safe, which means we think they're safe. They may have some issues, they may have some problems, but generally we think they're safe. So you can take that to mean whatever you think it means, right? But I would always err on the side of caution when it comes to that type of terminology. Because, and again, in the United States specifically, and Europe is a little bit different. In the United States, we tend to introduce something as generally recognized as safe, and then do 10 or 20 years of testing to find out later, well, no, it's causing cancer and causing heart disease and causing all these things and killing people, right? But we find it out 10 to 20 years later, versus in Europe, where they tend to do a lot of those studies in the beginning, and then they're a lot more cautious, and again, it depends where you are in Europe, but they're a lot more cautious with adding certain ingredients or allowing certain ingredients into their system. This is why, and you could take a look at the food system. The food system is very different, right? We've talked about that. Food system here has 1 million things in it. Food system there has only a few things in it. Big difference. So let's go on with this study. So let's see what they found in terms of these rats. They found that the rats exposed to glyphosate and both glyphosate-based products developed tumors in multiple places, including the blood as leukemia, skin, liver, thyroid, nervous system, ovaries, mammary gland, adrenal glands, kidney, urinary bladder, bone, endocrine, pancreas, uterus, and spleen. So pretty much everywhere. Also, prenatal exposure to the weed killer was particularly detrimental. Mandrioli, who is one of the scientists here, said, noting that 40% of the deaths from leukemia occurred in exposed rats who were less than a year old. So that tells you a lot of what's going on here, right? Tells you a lot. Now, we also have to remember here that it's been a decade since the World Health Organization did research on this, and they classified glyphosate as a probable human carcinogen, which basically says it's a carcinogen, probably, okay? Again, it's that little nuance there, right? The World Health Organization likes to deal in nuances because they always like to leave room open. And of course, if it's a probable carcinogen, it doesn't mean it's an actual carcinogen. Therefore, we don't have to ban it, and we can still decide to use it if we want to, until you prove absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's a carcinogen. This is what's going on. So now it gets even worse than that. Why? Because, again, remember I said that the new administration has come in, and they're taking a look at all this, right? They're looking at food dyes, they're looking at vaccines, they're looking at pesticides, right? And remember, I talked about the MAHA report when I did an overview of the MAHA report, and one of the four things that is affecting our children out of that report was pesticide and toxic exposure. So we know that. We all know that. They are being exposed to these pesticides, and these herbicides, and these things. We are all being exposed way more than 30 or 40 years ago. It's become ubiquitous in society. So it's one of the big things. So we know that RFK is really going to look into this. And Monsanto and Bayer, who owns Monsanto, knows this as well. So what's going on? We're now seeing that Monsanto is lobbying a lot of these state legislatures to start to come up with laws to help to stop lawsuits. They want to be exempt from lawsuits because they are getting a ton of lawsuits, tons of them, right? And they've got, they may have to pay out a lot because they're losing those lawsuits, right? It's kind of like the vaccine thing. If you know the vaccine story, what happened with the vaccine story, right? In the early 1980s, vaccines, the few vaccines that were out, they were getting smashed by lawsuits because there was a lot of harm that was happening, right? And the moms out there were suing and stuff like that. And what did they do? They went to Ronald Reagan, they went to the legislature, and they said, we cannot continue to make vaccines unless we are exempt from lawsuits. And sure enough, you have the 1986 Act that exempted vaccines from lawsuits. And then we see an explosion in the vaccine childhood immunization program and vaccines from that point on. They didn't have to worry about lawsuits, right? Well, Monsanto and Bayer, they're trying to do the same thing. They have threatened to stop selling Roundup in the United States if it doesn't get greater liability protection. And on top of that, last month, Georgia became the second state to shield Bayer from some lawsuits alleging the company failed to warn customers of health dangers. North Dakota passed a similar measure in April. Okay, so there's a fight going on right now. Okay, it's, they want this liability protection because they're getting whopped with lawsuits. The question I always say, whether it's vaccines or Monsanto or pesticides or any of these companies, right? If you stand by your product, if your product is so great, why would you need liability protection? Same thing with vaccines. Why would you need liability protection? It's something to think about. Any product that needs liability protection, it just by default shows a problem. Because if your product was so great, then you should need liability protection. We don't need liability protection from cars and toasters and cribs and even pharmaceuticals. Why? Because they've been thoroughly tested, and, well, most of them anyway, have been tested, and actually, especially when it comes to products, consumer products, right? They've been thoroughly tested. Therefore, they stand behind their product. And if a product causes a problem, what do? They recall it, they fix it, and they issue it out. Now, of course, we just saw a story that came out recently that a lot of these drugs or pharmaceuticals that have been released by the FDA in the past bunch of years have not really been thoroughly tested, and or they just didn't do great tests on it. But that's a whole nother show. I could do a whole show on that. But at the end of the day, they want liability protection just like vaccines. Should they be given that? Or should we start to look at alternatives? And now, is there an alternative? That's the other question, right? We all know that Roundup in and of itself as a product, when you look at it as a product, it actually does what it's intended to do. However, at what cost? So there's got to be other things that can be used. I know small people who have even gardens at home, right, including myself. We use different things to deal with weeds and bugs and all these things, right? We use homemade stuff. So you're not going to tell me that there's not a way to be able to use something homemade on a bigger, larger scale for farmers to use? It's a good question. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of with legislation, with RFK and everything that's going on now. And if they are granted, they are granted this shield of liability, right, in terms of lawsuits. We don't know. So from that and lawsuits, I just want to play one more. I want to play a clip here. This is from 2018 from Cheryl Atkinson, who does great reporting on this. She did a report on a gentleman who had a lawsuit against Monsanto because he says he was harmed by it. And let's take a look at it, because I want to remind you guys of what's actually gone on in the past. Maybe some of you don't even know that this happened, right? It was definitely in the news. But take a look at this. It's a long clip, it's around 6 minutes, but it's relevant to what we're talking about today. So take a look at this clip and what happened back in 2018, just so you can kind of get a bigger frame of reference.
In a landmark decision, a jury found the chemical company Monsanto responsible for a man's terminal cancer. The case focused on a popular weed killer used by millions of Americans, but Monsanto's epic loss may have been sealed by inside documents exposing a disturbing use of slanted science. Lisa Fletcher has the story.
Environmental groups are applauding the landmark ruling.
This morning, fallout from a monumental verdict.
I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams thought that we would get such a potentially world-changing verdict.
Attorney Timothy Litzenberg represented Dwayne Lee Johnson, a former school groundskeeper who routinely used Roundup, the popular weed killer you find at stores, on farms, and in homes all over the country. Johnson is dying of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lawyers and the landmark case put the blame on Monsanto, saying Roundup's active ingredient, glyphosate, caused his cancer.
Did you find by clear and convincing evidence that Monsanto acted with malice or oppression in the conduct upon which you base your finding of liability in favor of Mr. Johnson? Answer, yes.
The jury awarded $289 million to Johnson, saying Monsanto failed to warn the public about the risks of glyphosate. Months later, the judge upheld the decision, but reduced some of the damages, lowering the total to $78 million. Monsanto told Full Measure, the verdict does not change the fact that more than 800 scientific studies and reviews support the fact that glyphosate is safe for use. Some 5,000 plaintiffs are now suing Monsanto, alleging exposure to Roundup caused them or their loved ones to develop cancer.
I think there's plenty of evidence to convince juries all over the country, so we'll keep doing it.
Key to the case against Monsanto was testimony that the company polluted the science. As part of the discovery phase of Johnson's trial, Monsanto turned over company correspondence, putting millions of internal emails and texts in public view.
When I understood there was litigation documents, I thought this is a trove, a treasure chest of information that the public should know about. They should know about what was behind the scenes in shaping the scientific viewpoint about glyphosate or Roundup.
Tufts University professor Sheldon Krimsky has been studying scientific ethics for 30 years. He sifted through the documents and published a paper with his findings.
Was there one thing that you saw that bothered you perhaps the most?
As a matter of doing business, believed it had the right to write articles and put other people's name on the articles.
Otherwise known as ghostwriting. A memo dated August 4th, 2015. A Monsanto scientist summarized his work with the words, "Ghost wrote cancer review paper." A year later, an email from a different Monsanto scientist discussed who should be the ultimate author of 2 scientific papers to which he contributed but was not listed as author. Monsanto told Full Measure any allegation of ghostwriting is false. Though in its email, Monsanto specifically cites only one article, a review of glyphosate published in the journal Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology in 2000, saying that paper followed all standards and was not ghostwritten. The company did not address other examples cited in Krimsky's paper.
Monsanto has a lot of scientists under their thumb. They have certain go-to professors, academics that they will rely upon to counter the real science or any sort of anything against Monsanto.
But the question of real science has become something of an international debate. In 2015, the World Health Organization's independent cancer research body, the IARC, classified glyphosate as a probable human carcinogen. That agency's research came under question in Congress from House Science Committee Chairman Lamar Smith.
There appear to be serious problems with the science underlying IARC's assessment of glyphosate. The news media recently revealed evidence of data deletion and manipulation of draft assessments before final publication.
As recently as September, a statement from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Pesticides stated, Roundup is not dangerous to humans despite continued public debate about its safety. Litzenberg questions the corporate connection.
Drug companies are often cozy with the FDA. Monsanto and the EPA is in a whole nother league. It's incredible.
In 2017, California Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu asked the EPA to address allegations that an EPA employee may have colluded with Monsanto to conduct a biased review of glyphosate. The EPA's Inspector General responded, asking the Office of Investigations to conduct an inquiry. More than a year later, no findings have been released.
Should the EPA be held to account for these cozy relationships and the potential damage it does?
These companies have had their foot in the door for a long, long time, and they developed these relationships over many years. Yeah, I'm not sure what the solution is, except a big change at the political level.
Monsanto is now owned by Bayer, and it denies improper action with officials, saying its interactions with the agency are, quote, routine, transparent, and fully compliant with the law.
It's discouraging because we've done a lot of reporting on science that turns out to be less than scientific.
Yeah, well, there are allegations of bias and influence on both sides. So the fact is, it's hard to get at the facts when you're talking about big business, and it's even harder to rely on claims of science.
Thanks a lot, Lisa.
All right, so that's it. And I don't know if you caught at the end of that when the gentleman was talking, he said, significant changes on the political level. Okay, so that's he's basically saying the administration, whatever administration, and remember this is back in 2018, whatever administration comes in, this is where the change needs to start, and big sweeping changes need to be made on that level. And I think this is where we may be headed again with RFK and HHS, but we shall see. We shall see. I think he is going to make some moves on that end, but again, he's playing political chess really at the end of the day with everything that's going on, because it goes back to do we just smash everything and then try to rebuild it, or do we work with what we have and try to make it better? Everybody's going to have their opinion on that. The big question, of course, that we always try to answer here is, what can we do? How can we take responsibility for ourselves? Obviously, not using any of these products is number one. We want to definitely do that, right? If you care about, your own health and you don't want to risk it, then obviously you want to stay away from those types of products. That's the first thing. But as far as internally, what do we need to do? We need to do everything we can to optimize our antioxidant status on a regular basis. You got to remember that your body is dealing with the stresses of life every single day, right? Your mucosal barriers, your antioxidant systems, your detoxification systems are dealing with things every single day. Physical, chemical, emotional stress that you're dealing with. It's always detoxifying. Your liver is detoxifying constantly. Everything you eat, everything you drink, everything is being detoxified, okay? So we want to support our detoxification, specifically the 3 phases of liver detoxification. And for those of you who really want to get into it, I did a whole show on detoxification, so you can check that out. I go into the phases of detoxification, what they are, how they work, and what nutrients work to support it. So make sure you check that. You can do a search on the website. Just put in detoxification. You'll see the articles, and you will see the show that I did on detoxification, because I really went into the weeds and step by step as far as detoxification. So check that out as well. But you also want to do other things, right? You also want to use a water filter for filtration system. It says here as well, for drinking and bathing, if at all possible. Choose natural methods for weed and pest management for your home and work area. Now, as far as, internally supplementation, besides good diet, good antioxidant-rich diet, right? Fruits and vegetables, making sure you're getting enough of those things, right? Again, the clean water, all that, you got to do that as well. Indoor filters, make sure you've got indoor filters to detoxify the home. Plants, many plants and things like that, which help. And then we want to take a look at supplements, right? So, of course, the Wellness Resources supplements are the ones that I always take a look at and I always recommend. You could, top choices for detoxification on that end, you could take a look at their Daily Detoxify, which is their top nutrient supplement for detoxification. Has chlorella, it's got N-acetylcysteine, it's got a lot of great stuff in it that really can help with detoxification systems. We've got glutathione ultra, which is the advanced bioavailable form of glutathione. Take that. And you can definitely take those too, because remember, N-acetylcysteine, which is in Daily Detoxify, helps to strengthen glutathione. So they work together on that. You could also take a look at Daily Protector Eye and Immune, which is a broad range of antioxidants, red and orange antioxidants, trace mineral support. That has great. I take that every single day. And then Tributarin Plus, which is essential postbiotic for mucosal barrier repair. So those are just some really great detoxification. Obviously, you can also get some vitamin C in you as well, because remember, vitamin C is an electron distributor and an antioxidant distributor in your body as well. So that also helps. So anything you can do to fortify your detoxification and antioxidant systems in your body is going to be good. And just do everything you can. But the big thing is to make sure that you're not using these products if you feel that you might be harmed by them, or if you think that this can be harmful for you, right? And again, get this word out to your friends and family who may have yards and may have, farms and things like that you know of. And make sure you educate them on this. We want to make sure we educate you on this information. That's the ultimate goal of this show. And hopefully you can get it out to folks and, do some good in the world. So that's what we want to do. So anyway, I hope this has educated you. I hope this shows you just some good information on this. And again, take responsibility at the end of the day. Don't wait for HHS. Don't wait for CDC, FDA. They've got their own issues that they're dealing with. All right. Don't wait. Take responsibility now for yourself. Everything you can do. Remember, you want to strike that balance, right? It's the balance between inflammation and oxidation and antioxidants, right? So the more we can bring up the antioxidants, the better we can bring down the inflammation, right? And that gives us better chance of being able to live a long, healthy life without having to dealing with a toxic burden, okay? And this is also for your children as well. So keep that in mind. All right, guys, I want to thank you for joining me this week. It's a pleasure and an honor to bring you this information. Make sure, go to georgebatista.com. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and follow us as always. I'm always with you, always giving you the information. Thank you for taking the time. Make sure you take care of yourselves. Make sure you take care of each other. And as always, control your health. See you next time.